Hello, religion thinkers. Today we're going to be talking about minimalism and Gandhi. What is minimalism, and how might Gandhi have become a leader in this movement? I'm Dr. James Rowell. I've written 2 prior books, Gandhi and Minimalism, Religion at the Extremes, and more recently, Making Sense of the Sacred. So, what is minimalism, and how did Gandhi become interested in this idea long before it became in vogue? Minimalism, you could say, is a pretty simple idea, not having too much stuff, and not buying stuff that you really don't need, keeping life simple. But how did Gandhi stumble on this idea when he was born in 1869, long before it really became in vogue? Well, you might find that the idea is really nothing new. It's been advocated by many religions, and Gandhi, when he was in South Africa fighting discrimination there, came upon the idea in reading a book by John Ruskin. The book was titled Unto This Last. Now, 3 of the essential principles which Gandhi learned from this book are these: that the good of the individual is contained in the good of all, that a lawyer's work has the same value as a barber's inasmuch as all have the right of earning a livelihood from their work, and the third, that the life of labor, the life of the tiller of the soil and the handicraftsman, is the life worth living. Now, the first 2, Gandhi had thought something of before, but it was the third one which really transformed Gandhi, really riveted him and made him the Mahatma. This was something that transformed his life, that the life of labor, the life of the tiller of the soil and the handicraftsman is worth living. Gandhi set about putting this idea into practice in his communal farm or ashram. He rejected the middle-class living, the standard of British material culture that he had been practicing before. Now he dressed simply, lived simply, and he was a new man. Now this newly transformed man became the Mahatma, the great soul as we know him today. But it did have consequences for his personal life and for his family. He did not want his children to get the education that he himself had gotten, and he wanted to have the most simple standard of living possible, to live indeed as the poorest of the poor, and to go about doing some basic jobs. Spinning cloth, weaving, he thought was a duty that all Indians should follow. Gandhi was very critical of machine civilization and machinery. He wrote this in a book called Hind Swaraj. Machinery is the chief symbol of modern civilization. It represents a great sin. A sin of exploitation, a sin of depriving others of basic needs, you might say. But Gandhi further wrote in his book, "What I object to is the craze for machinery, not machinery as such. The craze is for what they call labor-saving machinery. Men go on saving labor till thousands are without work and thrown into the open streets to die of starvation. I want to save time and labor not for a fraction of mankind, but for all. I want the concentration of wealth not in the hands of a few, but in the hands of all. Today, machinery helps a few ride the backs of millions. The impetus behind it all is not the philanthropy to save labor, but greed." Now, this may sound like socialism, but it really wasn't. Gandhi had a radical critique of modern material living, of modern consumer standards of life. Now, this standard of simple living was something that didn't attract or appeal to Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of India. And it's not something that's really been practiced even in communist China. That has moved towards a more kind of market-based society, even though it tries to retain its original communism. Gandhi was not a socialist, but Gandhi did want to espouse a very simple idea of material living, a more minimalist standard. That's what we would call it today. But let me ask a few questions about this minimalist standard of living, because it's not an easy thing to put into practice. How far should one go in one's minimalism? What kind of possessions are you really willing to give up? You do need a certain standard of living. You want food, you want clothing, you want housing, and maybe you want to take a little vacation once in a while. But what kind of standard of living is going to allow you to do that? Are you willing to give up your computer? Are you willing to give up your cell phone? If you did give up both, that would be a simpler, more minimalist lifestyle, but you probably wouldn't have access to this video right now. You wouldn't be watching me. And also, if you eschewed the education that Gandhi encouraged his kids not to get, you wouldn't be sending kids to college, and people like me would be out of work. I couldn't make this video for you. So there are valid questions to the practicality of the minimalist idea that Gandhi had. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a great admirer of Gandhi. I think a lot of the ideas, the moral and spiritual ideas, nonviolence, and the tolerance and inclusiveness that Gandhi had of other religions are wonderful things. But one must look at all thinkers critically and with an open mind as well. How far can we go with this minimalism? To what extreme do we go? Should we accept a minimalist standard of living and live as simply as possible? Should we, on the other extreme, have a more maximalist standard of living to participate freely in consumer economy? Now, I don't believe that he who dies with the most toys wins, as the popular bumper sticker has expressed it. But I'm not sure I'm on board with the precise minimalism of Gandhi either. I fall in moderation between those extremes. Because you can think about it like this. The less you buy, the less other people are going to be able to make a living. By buying things, material things, goods, possessions, stuff you may not absolutely need, you are not just putting wealth in the hands of a few, but you are also allowing other middle class and perhaps lower class poor people to make a living themselves. So the more we reduce our standard of living, that's going to have an impact on the economy, on a consumer economy. And of that, we can be cautious and perhaps critical. There are many things, however, that we can learn from a minimalist point of view. Let me know what you think a happy compromise is between a minimalist and a more maximalist point of view. Talk about them in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed, like and subscribe to this video, and look forward to more videos.